Hello guys and welcome to Rotlin. In today's video we'll create an application with a login screen designed in Jetpack Compose and authenticating using Firebase authentication. The software requirements for this project is to have installed Android Studio Arctic Fox or any of the newer versions such as Android Studio Chipmunk or Android Studio Bumblebee. And without any further delay, let's do it! The first thing we need to do is to click on New Project, then we select Empty Compose Activity, and finally we click on Next. This will open a dialog with several options for the project. The first one is the name of the application, which we'll call Firebase Compose App. Then we have the package name, the location in our computer, the language which is Kotlin. It's important to address that Compose is not available for Java, so we will not be able to select Java here. And then we have the minimum SDK for the project, which is defaulted for API 21 or Android 5, and is the one that we'll use. We click on Finish, and this will start Gradle building the project for a few minutes. The first thing we need to do after Gradle finishes building our application is to get rid of this composable function. And we get rid as well of all of the references, as well as surface 2. And instead, we'll declare a new composable function called login screen, which will be the responsible of rendering our login screen to our application. We need to annotate this one with the composable function, with the composable annotation, so that the Compose compiler recognizes the function. Then we start to declare the variables. Remember, empty. And we do the same for the password. We need to import this element. And here we need to do a couple of imports more. For set value and get value. And now we see that the errors are gone. After this, we will declare a column. Inside of the column, a modifier, which will have the background. We set up the color of the background, and we need to import this. We need to be very careful to import the classes that are actually part of Compose. And then we fill the maximum size of the screen with this column. After this, we'll set the alignment and the arrangement. This means that when the elements are set in the column, this will be centered and horizontally, respecting of the y-axis. And then we need to do the same for the arrangement. Which this will mean that the elements will be aligned to the top of the column instead of to the middle of the bottom, for example. So inside of the column, we will start to define our elements, which will put a text first of all, which this is the equivalent of text view in XML. And then we set the text we want to display. Sans serif. this as well. The font size 32 sp. This will be part of the title. And finally, a modifier, which will be setting up the padding of the element. So for example, in this case, we use 16 display port points. So after this, we'll copy this text because we'll set up another one. And this will be the second part of the title. At this point, I guess that every of us will be already aware of what is this application going to be about. And in the middle of these ones, we'll set up an image. Import the image, and again, we need to pick up the first one. So we start with the painter. And now at this moment, we will import an image from our computer to create a vector asset. So we select here in local file. This is a logo that I downloaded before. It can be anything actually. The important thing is that it is the format SVG. Okay, so yeah. In this case, I import this one from KFC. I will just leave it as it is in terms of size of the icon, and then click on finish. Automatically, it will be just here. So now I need to import this element, and I say like the ID is r.drawable. I see KFC logo, and set up a content description for this element, which will be KFC logo, and a modifier as well. Which will be, in this case, to edit the size of the image. And now click here in build and refresh so that the compose is going to render the elements that I have already defined now. This is not working at the moment because I need to call the function from here. The function was called login screen. This preview is going to be responsible to render the preview here on the screen. And if we want to run the application, we need to do it from here. So we need to call the function from the onCreate method, then setting the content, then applying the theme, and finally calling the function. Now we'll reduce a little bit this, and voila, we see something on the screen already. So the first thing we are gonna do is just to reduce the second part of the title. And we see that we didn't need to build and refresh this time, and this is because Android Studio does this on real time for some constant literals, such as, for example, the font size, or if we happen to increase the padding, so it will do the same as well. So now we are gonna keep defining the rest of the elements, and now we will declare a card. We need to import it as well. Modifier fill max width in this case, and then we set the padding horizontal. will define a rounded shape. And finally, a border. Just 1 dp. And this border will be black. Perfect. Now we are ready to start defining the elements inside of the card. And we'll put another column inside. We need to define this inside of the parentheses. Horizontal alignment will be center. And here on the vertical arrangement, I will separate the elements by a fixed distance. For this, I use spaced by, in this case 8 dp, which will mean that all of the elements that I define inside of this column will be separated by 8 dp. Finally, set up a modifier padding all dp. If we omit here, it's exactly the same. Okay, but for clarifying purposes, I decide just to indicate it explicitly. And now we are going to start to define the text files that will go inside of the card. I prefer to use the outlined text file because I like it more, and the value will be the email of the first one. On value change, the email as well. We need to define this one inside of a lambda. Start to organize this a little bit. The label will be a text. And we can already build and refresh this so that we have a bit more of visualization. Here we go. Now I continue defining the rest of the elements. A placeholder, which will be another text, but in this case I will just set up a hint so that the user have a bit more clear the format of the text that needs to go inside. We'll say that this element has just a single line, modifier, fill max width, and then here on the keyboard, options, will basically indicate the type of text that this outlined text file is gonna take, which in this case is email. What this means is, like, when the user select this text file, the keyboard that is gonna open, it will have an email format which will show the @ symbol and, for example, .com. This is the keyboard type. Password. No, sorry. Keyboard type email in this case. And the IME action will be next. Again, we need to pick up first one in this case. This is the key that is shown on the soft keyboard on the bottom right side, and we have several options. Okay, in this case I pick up next, but we can go default, don't go none, etc. Now, with these options, we'll define some actions for when the user press on next. We are gonna do something specific. So for this, we select keyboard actions, and then on next, open lambda, and we are gonna define here a focus manager, which will manage where the focus is gonna be, or for example to clear the focus or whatever. So we come here and we select is a value focus manager. Current. We import and ready. Focus manager. Move focus. And we need to say the direction, in this case direction down, which is gonna move the focus of the keyboard to the next outlined text file that we are gonna define now. Okay, so we'll copy this and we define another text file, which the value in this case is gonna be password. Here as well, we don't need a placeholder. Now, single line modifier, and keyboard type in this case is gonna be password, and IME action is gonna be done. And instead of moving down, I'm going to just clear the focus. Now we'll refresh just to see the updates. And we see here the other text file. Now, outside of the card, we will define a button for forgotten password. We need to see, this is the column scope. So the card scope finishes here, and here I will define a row. Arrangement. So this means that the elements that I define inside of the row will go to the end. And then the modifier. This is important because otherwise, if we don't define the size of the row, it's never gonna arrange the elements inside properly, because it's gonna adapt the size of the row to the size of the elements that are defined inside. So in this case, we'll define a text button. We don't define any action in this case. And inside of this text button, and text composable. Black color, font style will be italic, for example. Text is gonna be forgotten password. And the modifier. And gonna just set up the padding to the end because it's the one that is just gonna apply. And now build and refresh this. And voila. So after the row, we will define a button for registering new users. Again, no action yet. Enabled. We'll come back here then. Modifier fill max width. dp. This is to change the background of the button, otherwise it's gonna take the colors from the theme, in this case the material theme. We will say that the background color is gonna be white. Okay, we have everything we need so far, and we put a text inside. Yes, text register. Font weight is gonna be bold. Color of the text black, and a size of 16 sp. Okay, we refresh this, and now we should be able to see all of the elements we have here. Here there is almost no space whatsoever between the second part of the title and the card, so we are gonna change this. And this is because previously we copied the first part of the text, which was including the just top padding. So instead of top, we'll define bottom here, and we'll refresh this. In the meantime, we'll scroll down to define the button, which will serve to log into the application. We define a button. Here. And the rest of the parts. Modifier damage is going to fill all of the width, and then colors for the button. Well, actually there is a problem with some of these elements. If we press tab, it's not properly working. There must be some kind of bug into the Compose compiler. But nevertheless, we just define it in this way. Color red. And then we'll set up if the button is enabled under certain conditions. For this, we'll check if the format that the user inputs for the email address and the password is valid. So the first part is to define a couple of variables. The first one is going to be if the email is valid. Patterns. Address. We'll check if the pattern matches the variable for the email. and we do pretty much the same for password. State of, and for the password we will just check something simple, which is like the length is 8 or more, but actually more than 7. Also we will define another variable which will define if the password is visible when the user inputs it. And the default state is going to be false because we don't want by default to show the password. Okay, so now come back here to the button we were defined, and we'll set up that the button is just enabled if the email address is valid and the password is valid as well. Valid is password valid. So now we are going to define a text inside of the button. The rest of the parameters as well, such as font, weight, bold as the previous, color, which is gonna be black, as well as the font size, which is gonna be 16 SP. Perfect. We build and refresh. And now it's showing. We see that the button is disabled by default because it's not complying with the preview these conditions. Additional to this one, we are going to set up as well the text files so that they show an error if the format for the email address of the password is not applying. So for this, we come to each of them. There is a parameter that is called isError, and we are gonna find in this one is password is email valid, and we'll do the same as well for the password. Valid, sorry. Error is password valid. We'll add as well a couple of icons to remove all of the content of this file, as well as to toggle the visibility for the password. For this, the first thing we need to do is to go to build.gradle to the module 1, scroll down and add a dependency, which is a library of extended icons in material design. I will leave this one in the comments below. And then we just sync and wait a bit to download the library. Now we need to come to each of the text files. We'll start for the email and define a trailing icon, which is gonna take a lambda, and we'll say if the email is not blank, otherwise it will show all the time. Then show icon button. On click, what I want to do is to remove the content of the email file. So we just set it up to an empty string. Inside of the icon button, the icon we are going to show define an image vector, and it's going to be this inside of this library that we just imported just right now. We need to import icons, and we need to import, for some reason it's not taking this one. Okay, now there we go. Import clear as well, and the content description, this is gonna be clear email. It was showing an error because the content description needs to be defined as well. Now we'll say that when the icon is pressed, it's gonna clear the email. We'll show the error when the email is not valid. Perfect. We'll do the same with the password. For this, we come as well and define the same for this as well. So the error is shown when the password is not valid, and then we will define the trailing icon. And in this case, we say that icon button on click. So when the user clicks, it's gonna toggle the value of the is password visible variable. So if it was false, it's going to show true. If it was true, it wants to show false. Now, inside of this icon button, we are gonna show a button. In this case, image vector, the same as the other one. We're gonna separate this for visibility. And since we have two different options when we press toggle and untoggle, we are going to define a condition that is going to change the icon as the user tap this toggle button. So we are gonna say that if the password is visible, then icons default visibility, else icons default visibility off. Okay, there you go. And here toggle lite, and also we are gonna import these elements too. Okay, now we have ready the icon we are gonna show. What is left is to set up visual transformation for the password, because by default we are going to see each of the characters we write down. So we say visual transformation if is password visible, if a password is defined to visible, then visual transformation none, so it's not converting the characters to dots. Otherwise, password visual transformation, and we build and refresh this to see the icons. It's taking a bit to render the preview, and there you go. We see by default that since the files are empty, it's going to show an error, outline of red around the outline text file, and then here will show the space that the icon will occupy, as well the untoggle password. So we are going to run our application now, and we'll see all of this. So we see here the files for email address in this case. The first thing we notice is the email address label. When we click, we are going to see the placeholder. And then here we have, as well in the keyboard option, we see that the keyboard type is now including the @ and .com, as well as the email action is next. So we start rodlin.code@gmail.com, and we see that it already changed to valid. If I put on a space, it's going to change to invalid again. I can also click here just to delete everything of this. Now, if I press next, it's going to change to the next text file. And now I type the password. Once the password is bigger than 7 characters, it's going to disappear the error, and then I can toggle and untoggle the visibility of the password. Now I see that the keyboard is different than before, because now it doesn't have it doesn't contain this keyboard with the @ and .com, and instead I have a normal keyboard for password, and then I have the email action defined to done. When I click on done, it's going to clear the focus. No, it's not clearing the focus because I didn't define this. So instead, yeah, I made a mistake here. Actually, it should be undone. So let's run the application again. This is a problem sometimes of copying things, but nevertheless, they are small bugs and easy to fix. Run the application again, and we'll do @gmail.com. We change to this one, rodlin123, and now we press on done, and the focus is cleared, and we have the button activated. If for any reason we come back, the button is inactivated again. This is it for the first part of the tutorial. In the second part of the video, we'll set up a Firebase account and add the logic to our project to log in using Firebase authentication. If you like the video, I would really appreciate that you give a like to the video and subscribe to the channel. I will upload new videos every week in 2022, so this is the best way to not miss any of them. Please leave me a comment if you have any questions, and see you in the next one. Bye.